First, let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
I'm outraged that we have a candidate for mayor of New York, Mr. Mamdani, that cannot walk back or cannot condemn the words globalizing Antifa. Let me tell you what it means to a Jew. It means violence. It means October 7th. It means firebombing people in Colorado. So that's the connotation. That's the essence of it. And that's what it means to Jewish people.
That's Donnie Deutsch weighing in. Flat out, fallout continues from among Dems as Zohran Mamdani locks in the Democratic primary. But leadership not on board. Not Jeffries, not Schumer, not Gillibrand, because the guy's a socialist, communist, radical anti-Semite. His views are all confirmed and reconfirmed by him. What is New York thinking?
Number 2.
I think it's close. I just spoke with some of the people involved. It's a terrible situation that's going Gaza, he's asking about. And we think within the next week we're going to get a ceasefire.
That is President Trump. Chance for peace. Bibi coming stateside next week. Gaza operation comes to a close, perhaps, as all Hamas leadership has been killed, founders wiped out. But they still have Hamas fighters in there. The next move, release all the hostages if the fighting is to stop.
Number 1.
And these are reforms, Mr. President, are going to make this program stronger, more effective, more efficient, improve it in a way that it gets the assistance to the people for whom it was intended and not to people who are gaming the system.
There you go. The big, beautiful bill. Make or break for the president's economic 4-year foundational agenda. The market is soaring because of it and because of the prospect of trade deals. Musk makes it harder. I'm talking about Elon by coming out and basically saying I'm starting a third party if you go out and do that. And we'll talk about the chance of passing. We see that Markwayne Mullin, a senator, great friend of the show, has told our reporter that they have the votes to pass the bill in the Senate. Now, if that is indeed the case, they're not out of the woods yet because they've changed it. And a lot of Republicans say, I'm not voting for it if you change anything. And then Don Bacon, the questionable Republican out in Nebraska, says, I'm retiring. So now they have no leverage over him. And that was the one thing, if you lose all Trump support, you probably will lose. But now he says, I'm out. Joining us now is Marin, former Democrat, running now as a Republican, the 2025 Manhattan District Attorney race against the embarrassment to this country, Democratic incumbent Alvin Bragg. Maud, welcome.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here.
Well, first off, what is your take as we have the second round of ranked voting, choice voting today is going to lock up Mamdani getting this nomination? What does it tell you about the Democratic Party in New York City?
Well, Brian, I'm going to tell you, I remain horrified by the fact that Mamdani has a clear shot of becoming the mayor of our great city, but I'm not super surprised. And part of that is why I left the Democratic Party and am now currently running as a Republican. I ran as a Democrat in 2021 for city council. I have experienced the leftward lurch of the Democratic Party in New York City around a whole range of issues, but certainly around public safety. And it's bad for our city, and it's bad for those of us who live here.
So, let's think about this. He is anti-cop. He wants to send the social workers out there. By the way, did you ask the social workers? I'm pretty sure they're not into going into domestic violence situations. Number two, he wants to basically, I'm not going to police free speech. It's okay to say globalizing Antifa. He's fine with that. He's also one of the people that got arrested after the October 7th attack in New York City, protesting for Hamas. This guy's against billionaires, capitalists. He's a socialist. Free buses and up everybody's taxes that actually has a job. Here he is Sunday. I just want you to hear this. Here he is Sunday, cut 729.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the Intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the Intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech in the manner.
Quickly, for the people who care about the language and who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
Ultimately, it's not language that I use. It's language I understand there are concerns about.
So tell me, as a legal scholar, do you believe that globalizing Intifada is policing language?
Oh, please. It's a call to terrorism. Anyone who understands that the Antifada, what happened twice when people were bombed in cafes and on buses and people knifed to death as part of the call to terrorism in Israel, the phrase globalize the Antifada is to bring it here. I defend, by the way, people's right to say globalize the Antifada. You can say, I want more terrorism here. Like the First Amendment gives you the right to say ugly, horrible, stupid things. But you also have to be held responsible for saying that. And that means that if you're running for mayor of New York, everybody gets to know that you're pro-terrorism, right? You can't weasel out of it. And let me just say something else, Brian. You said the thing about sending in social workers, right? Let's be super clear. This young man, if he becomes the next mayor of New York, he's going to have a security detail. He's not going to ask to be surrounded by social workers when he walks down the street in New York City. He is going to have a full security detail for himself, but our children who have to ride on the subways are going to have to go into subways that are less clean, less safe, and less likely to deliver them to their school or their job in one piece. So I don't want to hear about that stupid social work nonsense. It's ridiculous.
It is. But
as far as his little dance about free speech, Brian, he doesn't want to police speech by not saying I'm rejecting Globalizing Antifada, which is a call to action. On the other hand, if I say trans women are men, then every Democrat, including Zohran Mamdani, gets himself all up in an uproar because he wants to police the speech of women who are defending women's rights for our daughters and for a generation of women who have the right to same-sex sports and same-sex facilities. So don't tell me he's suddenly become a big free speech advocate, because they've been policing our speech for a really long time.
So
Globalizing Antifa is a call to terrorism, and he's in favor of it.
Right, and we see it on the streets now. And then we see, believe it or not, I guess it's legal. Of course it's legal, but it's scary, stupid. On 42nd Street in Times Square in New York City, I know people listening around the country just know this is where all the tourists are. There are people protesting for Iran. While we're bombing Iran's nuclear program, this terroristic state, enemy of America for 46 years, we have New Yorkers protesting for Iran against us.
Look, Brian, for years when I was fighting in the education space and talking about the terrible, terrible sort of leftist indoctrination and critical race theory that was going on in our schools, in our universities and higher ed, and also in the K through 12 space, people often acted like those of us raising the alarm were being histrionic or ridiculous. But we've educated a generation plus of kids to think that America is the enemy, that sensible good governance, like improving our public safety and making our schools better and supporting our small businesses, that's somehow not the path forward in our great city. And then instead we should have, and everyone keeps calling Zohran Mamdani a socialist. Let's be clear. His prescriptions are communist, saying that he wants to get rid of all billionaires and have government-supported grocery stores and make everything free is a communist plan, an economic plan. And he is going to accelerate the outward migration from our city, decimate our tax base, and make all of us have to live through sort of this is not a spoiler. Guess what? Communism doesn't work. You see it in every place that it's been tried. It doesn't work. It impoverishes people and makes great cities and great countries fall apart. And that's what there's no secret here as to how it would work if this guy got in office.
Marin, our guest, former Democrat running as a Republican in the 2025 Manhattan District Attorney race against the notorious Alvin Bragg, notorious for being terrible. Go prosecute Danny Penny and President Trump, and you think that brings justice for the American people and for New Yorkers. A survey was done in Manhattan. They found that 56% of respondents described crime as out of control. A quarter of those attributed the crime rate to poor management by the mayor, while 22% blamed district attorney for allowing too many crimes to go unprosecuted. That's the problem. You commit a crime, they don't want to send him to Rikers, and they don't want to keep him in jail. They don't even want to detain him. So cops don't make the arrest. They don't want to waste their time. It's just a terrible combination. You're about 3,000 cops short of a full force in New York City. The money is there. Right. So, Maud, you mentioned you've been a Democrat your whole life. Have the Republicans given you the support to go against Alvin Bragg and the Democratic machine in New York?
Brian, I'll say this. If people want to see what I would do versus Alvin Bragg, you can go to my website, maudformanhattan.com, and I lay it all out. I have gotten tremendous support from the people, not just in New York, but around the country. People from all 50 states have sent donations. They know how bad Alvin Bragg is. I could definitely use a little bit more support from the powers that be in the Republican world. I understand that folks are pretty focused right now on defeating Zohran Mamdani. I think that while a lot of people like to overlook Manhattan because they think you cannot win in Manhattan, I know for sure that there are enough votes in Manhattan to defeat Alvin Bragg because I talk to people every day who, like you said, Brian, see crime with their own eyes out of control in our city. And it's not just crime, it's quality of life. You can walk through Washington Square Park and manage not to get mugged, but you will see people with needles sticking in their arms, people who are using the park as a toilet. You will see absolutely horrible, disgusting things. And we all pay a lot of taxes. We should have the right not just to not be mugged or hurt or harmed, but also to live in our beautiful city. And not so long ago, you could walk through that park with your kids and just see a beautiful, gorgeous park. And now you're walking through what looks like a crime scene. And that's not acceptable either.
I hear you. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Maud Maron, best of luck. Obviously, I hope you win. Alvin Bragg's an embarrassment to the country. He just doesn't realize it yet. And hopefully the Republican Party, whatever is left of it in Manhattan, will wake up and understand you have a unique opportunity here. And if people want to help you out, where do they go?
They go to maudmarin.com or maudformanhattan.com. You can sign up to volunteer, to door knock, to make phone calls, to donate. It's all there. Please go check it out.
All right. Shock the world. Maud, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
Jason Chaffetz is here. Jonathan Greenblatt, the CEO of National Director of the ADL, is also here. And we're following the progress in the big, beautiful bill. The Voterama looks like it has stopped, but it was 20-plus hours. Jason, what do you think's happening in the Senate? I know that they're worried about 4 votes. They're worried about 4 votes. Murkowski, Collins, Tillis, and Rand Paul. Tillis and Rand Paul are thought to be lost.
I still think they get it over the finish line. It sounded like the latest comment from the Majority Leader Thune that they have the votes. It's always a little precarious, but I think they're going to get from here to there.
Where do they vote? When do they vote? Today?
I think they could vote at any moment. Once they open the vote, it won't close in 10 or 15 minutes. It could go on for a few hours. But
why wouldn't they all show up and just vote for something like this?
Because and a lot of them want to go home. So I think that is always a compelling factor. It's just the way the Senate operates. They just kind of go on their own sweet time.
All right. So what they would do is the Senate operates, and then House is in town, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a Republican, this is what Speaker Johnson is hoping that the Senate pays attention to, cut 1.
Could you talk about, as the Senate bill stands, if you assume there's no changes, which is what they're saying, is that something you think you could pass?
We're going to pass this bill, one way or the other, and I have prevailed upon my Senate colleagues to please get as close to the House product as possible. I've been very consistent from the very beginning, and I'll continue to do that. So there's still a lot of amendments and a lot of game to play yet, and we're hopeful.
Do you need change it? Will you change it if they don't change it?
We'll see what the final product is. I'm very hopeful and optimistic as always. We will deliver. We will get this job done.
And he's been pretty consistent, always optimistic. But Jason, what is the procedure? So if the Senate hands it to him, and Don Bacon, they've got to cross by 1 vote. I know some people are out, and some seats were vacant. But if Don Bacon, who says I'm retiring and doesn't like the president anyway, and the feeling's mutual over in Nebraska, and if you have to go back in, if you're Speaker Johnson, you say, well, what do I have to do to change this to get your vote? If he changes it, is it going to go back to the Senate?
Well, I've been to this rodeo many times. Thomas Massey is also in that boat saying, hey, I'm not going to do it. I still think they're going to force the vote. They're going to force. Here's the thing. If you take the vote and it does not pass, you can vote on it again. So they can keep doing it. Once that full pressure and weight of the entire bill goes, I think they'll still ultimately get the vote. And a lot of times you'll see people who are on the fence or don't want to do it, they'll just vote present. They won't actually vote against it. We saw that earlier. We saw Andy Harris do that at a Maryland on a critical vote. So there are ways to get from here to there, but you got to almost put it up to a vote. People start changing their minds when it's actually on the floor and their constituents start calling them.
So tell me if I'm wrong about this. When the CBO goes to score it, they scored it as if 2017 tax law didn't take into effect. They say, okay, the taxes go up, and if you don't do anything, the taxes go up. Right. And that means on the surface right away, more revenue comes in because the corporate taxes go up, the top rate goes up, everything went up. But then 2017 happened and brought all the taxes down. And it was so bad, being sarcastic, that Joe Biden didn't touch it. Didn't touch it. Right. He wasn't nobody touched any of the tax things. Nobody raised the corporate tax. Nobody did anything about it. But now it's time to make it permanent. And the CBO said, okay, if you make them permanent, that means there'll be a tax cut. So therefore, we lost revenue, and that lost revenue figures into how much goes into the deficit. And then we project growth at 1.8. Again, abhorrently low, 1.8. I mean, talk about the glass being half empty. 1.8. So you put those things again, and then you have 3.3 trillion into the debt over the next 10 years, as opposed to if you take the 2017, which it would be a $500 billion. And I think they would be off the deficit.
The only reason the original Trump tax cuts were not made permanent was because of this scoring. What they do is they look at a 10-year window, and they assume that if you raise taxes, all the revenue to the Treasury will go up by the proportion of those taxes. What they don't do is dynamic scoring. And under Donald Trump, they cut taxes. Democrats yelled and screamed that was going to hurt revenue to the Treasury, and it did exactly the opposite of what the Democrats said. You cut taxes, the economy moves, and the revenue to the Treasury went up. Same principles in place here, because not only do you get to continue on with the tax cuts that happened in 2017, you have additional tax cuts, which will be more stimulative. So to suggest that the economy is only going to be moving at 1.8%, whether or not you have taxes or don't have taxes or have a tax increase, is ridiculous. The CBO is fundamentally wrong. They were wrong on Obamacare. They were by millions, by tens of millions of people, they were off. And I think they never take that into consideration. And it's so wrong. So
the Wall Street Journal says the Senate bill is the first legitimate shot at entitlement reform in 20 years. Yeah. It says it slows the steady growth of Medicaid, food stamps, and student loans. Notice, I didn't say cut. It slows the rate of growth on all these items. It didn't stop Tom Tillis for saying it's the worst thing ever, or Elon Musk for tweeting out that I'm going to start a third party if you pass this.
Yeah, look, there are fundamental reforms. Does it do everything that I would do as a conservative in cutting expenses? And no, but this is such a huge, massive step forward. And so you have all these people that say, oh, we want border security. Well, it does that. Oh, we need to help the military. Well, it does that. Do you need tax reform? Oh, it does that. You know, should there be a work requirement for people to get Medicaid and Medicare? Well, for some, yes. For others, no. And so for all these bumper sticker politics of trying to say, oh, it's going to destroy the world and the earth and everything else, they're just wrong. They're just fundamentally wrong. And they got to step up, take the vote, and live with the consequences of it, because Democrats, they want a tax increase. That's what they believe. We're one good tax increase away from prosperity. And again, they're wrong.
So you have a book out today. Congratulations. It's called They're Coming for You: How Deep State Spies, NGOs, and Woke Corporations Plan to Push You Out of the Economy. And you have on the cover Soros, you have Bill Gates, you have Obama, and President Xi and Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
So why that collection?
Because they're using data. Doge looked at all the money that's going out the door. We should be looking at the data that's going out the door. They're using that to affect elections. They're doing that to debank people, to push them out of the economy so they can't participate that. You've had Operation Choke Point, for instance, and Operation Choke Point 2.0. You have how it affects medicine. If you think that the Democrats and the far left radicals are and the woke corporations are just going to let Trump and conservatives be on their merry way, no way. They're going to use that data and they use it against you. It's happening in real time right now, and people have to realize that and open their eyes. That's why I wrote for They're Coming for You, because that's what they're doing. They debanked Melania Trump and Barron Trump. They tried to go after the poultry industry. They tried to go after the meat industry. They tried to go after the gun industry, but they're also going to go after you.
So did you find this out from work the Doge was doing?
No, I started doing this while I was in Congress. I was starting to look at facial recognition and how that's weaponized. We figured out that in Florida, when you go to get your driver's license, name, address, telephone, hair color, whether or not you wear glasses, all that. Did you know that the state of Florida used to, they would make you pay to get your driver's license, then they would take that information and sell it to a data broker. It's a $400 billion a year industry, data broker. I can go and I could take, don't want to give anybody an idea, but I could take a specific address. I can take a circular within 100 feet and tell you everybody that's been there with a mobile phone in the last 60 days. Readily available. I can buy that right now.
How can you do that? There's just websites.
Data brokers. It's called geofencing. Look at your automobile. They're rolling computers. You can take all the information. Those car companies, I detail exactly what they're doing. One of the big benefits that Elon Musk gets from that Tesla, and it's all these others, Toyotas and whatnot, Kia, they can tell you what radio station you're listening to, where you're going to, how fast you travel, whether or not you come to a stop. Do you look in the rearview mirror? All of this data is collected and it's sold. It's monetized. You combine that. We have over 500,000 cameras in this country that are watching and doing facial recognition.
Are you saying this in order to just know what's happening, or are you saying that there's a way to stop it?
I think there's a way to stop it. I think you should have the right to be forgotten in this country. You as consideration enter into a detail. You get that mobile phone and you trade away a little bit of privacy so you can have some convenience. But why should they be able to monetize that in perpetuity? And why is it that they enter into a contract with a 13-year-old and then they continue to monetize that? We talk about how they target kids, they give computers in schools. Well, they're gathering all this data and information. And so, yeah, there are things that should be done. I think you have the right to be forgotten. And I think there needs to be full disclosure on exactly what they're collecting and what they're sending. It's like when we did reform on labeling for food. They should have to do that for everything in technology.
So, that's so interesting because there are people out there that are looking to do that. The former owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers, his name eludes me at the moment, came in here and says that's a way to grab back your privacy. He also wants to buy TikTok because that's the biggest breach. I mean, TikTok, for us still be using TikTok, could you explain to our audience how bad that is?
Once they're in your phone, they're going to glean everything, all of your contacts, all of your communication, who you're texting, how often you're texting, where you're going, your geolocation, all of that. And look, kids, I think, are naive to it. They like watching the funny videos. I like watching cat videos too. I think they're pretty funny.
I don't.
But but I do. And look, that's very compelling. The entertainment side of it is very, very compelling. But that data is going for nefarious intent, and the Chinese are using it, and it's affecting elections. It's affecting your healthcare, what you pay, whether or not you can get medicine or not. And the book, I have 450 footnotes out there. This took a year and a half to put together. This is not some tinfoil conspiracy. This is stuff that's happening right now in real time.
All right. So it's called They're Coming for You, Jason Chaffetz, how deep state spies, NGOs, and woke corporations plan to push you out of the economy. Do you have a few minutes when we get back?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. A few more minutes with Jason. We do know they are back to the Voterama. Well, actually, they never stopped, but now they're back. They look fully in attendance. Could a vote, from what you could tell, does a vote look like they're ready to vote?
Oh, no, I think they're done with the Voterama. I think they're getting ready to vote.
So that's why they're all there, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't have that many senators sitting there.
The bad side about having a show from 9 to noon, it's very hard to follow what's happening in real time. I have to kind of do it back before there were talkies, like Charlie Chaplin. I'm trying to interpret and read lips.
This is waking time for the Senate, so they're awake at this hour.
A few more minutes with Congressman Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor. He's got a book out called They're Coming for You, how deep state spies, NGOs, and world corporations plan to push you out of the economy. And I've thought about this. They put out over the weekend that Eric Trump put out that the family has spent $400 million fending off the attacks on them and their companies. And they said most of it, the Russia investigation. Think about Letitia James, all this stuff that they had to do, fight off. Their CFO goes to jail. Is that part of what you're talking about in this book? You get information on somebody, you weaponize it against them?
No, this is about you as an individual. These aren't political leaders. Look, the Trump family's gone through probably more lawfare than anybody else in the world. What I'm talking about is the average person who maybe just lives in the heartland. They live in Tennessee or Illinois or something like that, and they happen to have a gun. Maybe they go to Cabela's. Maybe they bought a MAGA hat. Those people are being targeted. And targeted significantly. And I'm also talking...
Even still with President Trump in power?
Oh, absolutely. And
by who? With the FBI run by Dan Bongino and Kash Patel?
I'm just telling you, what they do is the government will sell the data. Once the brokers have it, then you have other organizations that can start to use that data. And reputational risk is something that banks and credit unions are forced to look at. Now, the Fed, just in the last 5 days, has said that they're going to pull that back a bit, but they get tested by the Federal Reserve. And reputational risk is how many of your consumers actually buy these products, because that adds to your reputational risk. That's how people get debanked, and they don't even know it. Like, what do you mean I can't get a loan? What do you mean I can't get it?
Jamie Dimon claims that doesn't happen.
Oh, it happens in spades. I detail and articulate it, and I list out all these different organizations. You ask a cattleman if they've had trouble getting loans, because the woke left really wanted to get rid of cattle. They just did not believe that cows should exist.
Meat and cows were destroying
and poultry and chickens, and those people had a really hard time getting banking relationships. And they debanked Melania and Barron Trump, and you can go down the list. It's huge. The other thing is healthcare. One of the most gnarliest things I found in the book is they started a group, the Democrats did, called Vote ER. And this doctor ended up getting, get this, they got thousands and thousands, 50,000 healthcare professionals in 700 hospitals to go and register voters, people that were in the hospital. It even went to psychiatric patients, registered to vote. Guess what? Once they know who you're going to vote, once they know that you vote or that you're already registered, they then go and compare that to other data and say, oh, here's all the Democrats. Then they started to say, hey, we're going to target this. So in Kansas, for the abortion vote that they had, they sent out 65,000 texts. And if this is your doctor, you're under sedation, and they come and say, hey, let's talk about voting and your voter registration. I mean, that is really unbelievable that so much for HIPAA laws, so much for patient,
See, the one thing that got me when in 2020, President Trump's in the White House, but yet he's being shadow banned. His followers are being shadow banned. Republicans, conservative thoughts, columns, tweets that are trending, all of a sudden don't trend. Don Jr. But yet he was in power. And yet he had the FBI director and he had the CIA director. Did he not, what was going on here? Who's running the country?
Right now, you can go into Times Square and you'll see Ray-Ban and Meta doing an ad to sell glasses that have AI components. So we talk about how MIT, these two kids came up and developed for less than $200 these glasses, which are now commercially available. It wasn't a direct connection, but they're doing the same thing, where they can walk down the street and through facial recognition, remember these other companies have tens of billions of things, and they can say, oh, look, that's Jill. And then quickly it tells, oh, Jill went to the University of Tennessee. She majored in anthropology.
You can see that right now.
You can see that right now, and they're marketing and they're selling it because they're using that data, and it's scary.
The name of the book, They're Coming for You, How Deep State Spies, NGOs, and Woke Corporations Plan to Push You Out of the Economy. Congratulations on the book, Jason. Appreciate it. Go get it.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the Intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights.
Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the Intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech in the manner...
Very quickly, for the people who care about the language and who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
Ultimately, it's not language that I use. It's language I understand there are concerns about.
Do you believe this clown? And he's going to get the Democratic nomination to be the next mayor of New York City. He doesn't hear the police, police words. Jonathan Greenblatt joins us now, CEO and National Director of the ADL. Jonathan, how horrified are you by this guy's imminent nomination?
Well, I'll tell you, Brian, I'm so glad to be back on the show, but I wish we weren't talking about this.
I know.
The idea that you would have someone who would vie to be mayor of New York City, the city, not only in America, but in the world with the largest Jewish population, who is willfully unwilling to simply articulate that a phrase that is associated with violence, with the slaughter of more than 1,000 people, that it worries Jews, that it frightens Jews, people who will be his constituents. It is astonishing to me. And credit to Kristen Welker, as you played in that clip. She went after him again and again and again. She gave him chance after chance after chance, and he didn't blow it, Brian. He told us so much, not by what he said, but by what he didn't say. That's what I heard the loudest, what he chose not to say, what he chose to communicate with his silence, and it's frightening. It
is, and the thing is, he's proud of it. Sometimes if you ask Bernie Sanders, you're a socialist, he'll say, no, listen, I'm here to give everyone an opportunity. They don't really like to dwell on it. Or, that was something I responded to a question and it came out wrong. He goes, just ask him. He'll tell you. He'll tell you everything. He's proud of this. He's proud. Billionaires should be illegal, right? Remember, he was arrested October 8th, protesting against Israel after the October 7th attacks. You saw him go after Tom Homan. He looked like he had to be restrained for arresting illegal immigrants. I mean, this is a despicable character.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that if we try to understand Zohran Mamdani, he got his career started as a student activist at Bowdoin College, where he was the founder of their local chapter on campus of Students for Justice in Palestine. And for your listeners, Brian, SJP is the most hateful, the most hostile, the most outrageous group on college campuses that has led the effort to systematically target and victimize Jewish students, especially since October the 7th. That is where Mamdani got his start. And look, I appreciate that as politicians, they have positions on a range of issues, but on this core issue, in a moment when anti-Semitic violence has surged, I mean, we've seen, the state with the most anti-Jewish acts was New York in America last year, and 70% happened in New York City. And this guy won't say unequivocally, I stand with my Jewish constituents. This man won't say, unambiguously, I do not support violence against Jewish people. Instead, he bobs, he weaves, he ducks, and he moves. I got to tell you, Brian, I think all of us have real reason to be concerned.
So why do you think he got so many votes?
Well,
I mean, so 400,000, but...
Yeah, let's be honest. He actually didn't get a lot of votes. Only 1 out of 4 Democrats voted. And even then, I mean, we're talking about pretty small numbers, but it doesn't matter. I think he ran on an agenda of affordability. And look, I'm a very proud capitalist over here. I don't believe in, government-run grocery stores. I thought that fell out of style in the Soviet Union, in the 1970s, but whatever. So he ran on an agenda that tried to appeal to New Yorkers who are struggling, who have economic challenges, and I get that, and I appreciate that. There are a lot of people who are struggling. The challenge is that I have a background in economics, but that's not my job today. I would say that all of the economics ideas I've heard him propose have failed. They failed in the Soviet Union. They failed in communist China. They have failed over and over again. But my focus is on protecting the Jewish people, on fighting back against hate. And while he might not have made that a central focus of his campaign, it has been a central focus of his political career, and I'm deeply worried that he will bring that to New York City in a way that will normalize hate against Jewish people and eventually all people.
But he says he's not there to police speech. What do you say to that?
He said what?
He says, I'm not there to police speech.
I mean, whatever. He should be. Look, he's also said defund the police, right?
Yeah.
So this guy has a funny choice of words. But again, sometimes what matters most is not what you say, it's what you choose not to say. And by not saying globalize the Intifada is wrong, and by not speaking out unequivocally after Jewish people, including Jewish New Yorkers, were slaughtered on October the 7th, he's told us everything that we need to know. So, look, at the end of the day, though, when asked by Kristen or others, Brian, he resorts to, like, clever quotes and slick sound bites. I'm not interested in that. I want to know what is his plan to actually protect Jewish New Yorkers, right? And he hasn't shared that with us. He hasn't told us that. And I'm not interested if he goes and he finds like a small group of radical Jewish people who are anti-Israel to meet with and say, look, I found my tribe. No, the vast majority of Jewish New Yorkers are Zionist. The vast majority of us care about our community, and the vast majority of us have the right to know how he will protect us in a time of need.
So I want you to hear what Mayor Eric Adams, get your take on him, because he seems to be the only way to stop Mamdani getting this mayor job. Here's what he said, cut 37.
Jewish voters are going to do an analysis to determine exactly where he stand on these important issues. The largest Jewish population outside of Israel is in New York. My focus is on this city because Jewish voters are talking about public safety. African-American voters are talking about public safety. And all the other demographics are the same thing.
So he says it's up to Jewish New Yorkers. You have more Jewish New Yorkers in New York than any other place outside Israel, right? Does that matter? Are you guys is the Jewish community on the same page with this?
Well, look, like the ADL is a 501c3, not a C4, so we don't actually do politics. But what we will do is make sure we shine a very hot, bright light on exactly what Mayor Adams is saying. And Mayor Adams has been excellent. He has been amazing. He has stood with the Jewish community from his time in Brooklyn to his time in City Hall without hesitation. And that's not too much to ask. I think he's correct to point out that Jewish people have a vote, and I hope Jewish people will look at the candidates and consider the facts and do what they feel is right. I think I know where they would land.
So, I was on with Sid Rosenberg was on my Sunday show, and he said, these are his words, New Yorkers are filled with bad Jews that don't care about Israel and don't care to fight out against anti-Semitism. Do you find the same thing?
I probably might not put it I appreciate Sid and his voice. I might not put it exactly the same way, but I can tell you that Jewish New Yorkers I talk to and American Jewish people all over the country are deeply, deeply alarmed. Anti-Semitic incidents, Brian, are up literally over 900% this last decade. The issues on college campuses that we've talked about it before, places like Columbia University, NYU, Hunter College, they are abominable. And there's a hardcore group of malevolent actors who are driving this. I really appreciate that President Trump and Secretary McMahon have been bold on this issue. We need that kind of leadership. I appreciate that Mayor Adams has been bold on this issue, and that shows us, by the way, President Trump is a Republican. Mayor Adams is a Democrat. Like, this isn't a right or left issue. It's just right and wrong. And on this issue, I'm waiting to hear candidate Mamdani clearly tell us that he's on the right side of things.
So he, by the way, is for the BDS movement to divest from the boycott and divest from Israel, and pushing. That's been his message for a while. Then over the weekend, the State Department has pulled the visas issued to British punk rocker Bob Dylan and his band after this was their impromptu, I'm sure rehearsed chant at a festival broadcast on the BBC throughout Europe. Listen.
Free, 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 free. All right, but have you heard this one, though? Death, death to the IDF, death, death to the IDF, death, death to the IDF.
So he led those chants, was really proud of it. He says he hopes his daughter grows up to understand you have to try to change things you don't like in this world. And they took his visa and said, go tour somewhere else. So he's not going to be coming here. But your thoughts of that sentiment and the crowd that followed him in that chant?
Well, look, it's outrageous. At a music festival, 200,000 people would repeat a chant like that. It's despicable that I guess this aptly named person, Bob Dylan, would resort to something like that. And I'm glad that Secretary Rubio made sure this guy doesn't have a visa. He shouldn't be in this country if he's going to incite violence.
So, I hope they stomp down on it. I love what the president's doing with Harvard, a big time, and I think they're going to come to some type of resolution and hopefully some change at Columbia. What's your thought internationally of Netanyahu coming to visit the president on Monday, talking about peace in Gaza? Your thoughts?
Look, I must say, I have tremendous respect for the fact that President Trump stood with Prime Minister Netanyahu in the State of Israel when the Islamic Republic of Iran attacked, as they've been waging a war against one of these forever wars. The forever war that I want to end is the war that Iran has been waging against America and Israel for nearly 50 years. I think President Netanyahu and President Trump stopped it in its tracks. That's a good thing. I'm glad Bibi will come to the White House to share a plan for peace in the region. And look, the U.S. funded and Israeli-operated GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, run by Reverend Johnny Moore, is doing amazing work to try to feed the people of Gaza and not allow Hamas to hijack and hurt the people seeking food. We all want peace in that region, Brian. I want it, you want it, your listeners want it, but it needs to be peace on terms where everyone is accepted for who they are, regardless of how they pray, where the fascists and the Islamists don't get control, and where people can just realize their aspirations and dreams as Jews, as Christians, Muslims, whatever they want to be, and live together in peace. And I hope that's the path we're on. Now that the Islamic Republic of Iran has been defanged, now that Hamas and Hezbollah have been defeated, now that Syria has changed, I hope we're on a path to a better future for everyone.
Well, how do you feel about a two-state solution?
Well, I think we had a two-state solution of sorts on October the 6th, and we saw what Hamas did. So I hope that the Palestinian people can realize their dreams in a demilitarized way with an education system that doesn't teach them hate. And I think if we can do that, if we can have a kind of regime change in Gaza, where we can put a responsible government in place, as we've seen happen in lots of other places, right? This isn't impossible. We denazified Germany. We did regime change in Japan with Hirohito. Hamas cannot be allowed to rule Gaza. Not now, not ever. An organization dedicated to murdering and committing genocide against their Israeli neighbors and talking about killing Jews wherever they are cannot be allowed to rule Gaza. So I want them out for the safety and security of everyone in the region, and then I think all things might be possible. And the Israelis and the Palestinians, they'll figure that out themselves. I leave it to them to do so when Hamas is gone and all the hostages are let free.
And the good news, according to the Israelis, every one of the Hamas leadership is dead, including the last one on Friday, who is one of the founders and one of the architects of the October 7th attack. Is that what you hear?
Yeah, that's what I hear. And, it's interesting. They're all Hezbollah leadership gone, Iranian leadership just about gone, and all the Hamas leadership gone. So I understand that Qatar put out a new peace proposal today. I really think it's time for the Qataris to come to the table and actually do something constructive, Brian, and help us to end this conflict once and for all. All the hostages need to be freed. The Hamas criminals can be given safe passage to the Sudan or Yemen or go send them to Iran for all I care. And let's figure out a path towards peace finally for that region. All of us want that.
Jonathan, you're way too busy and way too needed. I never thought we'd get to a point in this country where anti-Semitism, anti-Israeli sentiment would rise like this. But hopefully we've turned the corner on it. And thanks for continuing to do what you do.
Look, we're in this fight together, Brian. I so appreciate you and your voice. Thanks for having me on.
Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO, National Director of the ADL. Thanks so much.